Okay, great. Ooh, recording in progress. All right, great. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. Welcome everyone to our Roy Talks with our June artists. We're very excited to be joined today by Britny Wainwright and Batres Gilvin and Greg Hatch. I'm Lynette Santoro. I'm the director here at Roy, and we're recording today's session, and we'll post that on our YouTube channel so you can catch up with us there. I want to begin with just some housekeeping things. This is intended to be a conversation, but everyone's agreed that it's just that. And so if you have questions, if you feel more comfortable to post them in the chat, go ahead. I'll monitor that and ask those questions on your behalf. But if you want to just unmute yourself and ask questions, artists are here to be able to answer those questions that you have too. So can be very casual. We love these conversations. We always learn something new about the artists. Already they've shared some answers to questions that we pose that we put on our website, and also their statements. So that information is available to you on roygbivgallery.org. I want to start by, of course, thanking our sponsors, Ohio Arts Council, Greater Columbus Arts Council, the Columbus Foundation, and our Roy members. Their support of us and our mission to support emerging artists makes conversations like this possible. So we'll go ahead and get started if everyone's ready to do so. I'm sorry Carla's not able to join us today. She's not feeling well, so we're sending her our best wishes for a speedy recovery, and Bradley will speak on her behalf. Okay, so we'll get started. Maybe just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the artwork that you have in Roy's space. And I have kind of behind me images of your work, so I could gesture, but maybe just speak in general terms about the work that you have here in the exhibition. And Greg, can you start us off?
Sure thing. So the pieces that I have in the exhibition are all felted wool, except for the ephemera from the performance that was on Friday evening during the opening. And these works are they are built upon past research and also past sort of passions into the idea of the personal and also the collective memory, my own personal narrative and perspective, and then allowing for iconography to tell a story. And then also that sort of idea of having more popular or more well-known images and lesser known, and allowing those to communicate as well as just simply the figures themselves.
Britny, can you go next?
Sure. So I'm Britny Wainwright. I am based out of Columbus, Ohio, actually. So I'm the local person in the show. It's been great getting to know everyone who's coming in to install. The works I've included in this exhibition are sculptural, and they continue interests that I've been working with in my work for a while now. I've had a very busy spring making work, and so I only bring that up because I feel like it's forced me to really push myself and take some risks and make completely different bodies of work for each of the exhibitions I've had. For Roy specifically, because I am, just across town in the studio, I could make bigger works. And so I really wanted to get away from the wall, make bigger things, and really kind of make the things that I've been wanting to make for a while. And I like to think of them almost like I'm making the furniture of the objects that I have been making. Like I'm slowly building this kind of like strange public comfortable private space. And like two of the works are larger and you can actually like walk around them. The one, it acts like a screen where you can kind of walk inside of it and look through to the other work. But they've all included as well like abstracted domestic objects like towels and flower vases and cushions and windows. So I'm sure I'll talk more about this too. I don't want to give it all away, but it's been good seeing this new body of work come to life in the gallery.
Thank you. Bradley?
Yeah, I am Bradley Gilvin. I am half of the collaborative Batres Gilvin. My wife works with me, and we are a multi-ethnic couple. So a lot of our work, it stems from conversations that we have to have with one another, things that come up between our families, our two cultures. So most of the work, actually probably all of the work in the gallery, is about those conversations that we have to have and those hurdles that we come across on kind of a daily basis. So there's a lot of pieces kind of referring back to our families joining together, like the wedding ring quilt. The 235 glasses were glasses from our wedding. And they have a lot of meaning to us personally, and kind of the story that took place around them as objects and how they represent people coming together. And also techniques that we're both familiar with or that come from our cultures. Carla grew up with piñata making in her family, with tin punching as kind of a Mexican folk art. I also grew up with kind of American folk art. My grandfather was kind of a folk artist in his own way. So we both bring those kind of materials, those techniques to the table and combine them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. We've been talking amongst ourselves about sort of the process here at Roy. So it's a juried space, and we convene a jury then to review the applications. And then many of those jurors, after scoring and determining what work would be invited to exhibit here, were also instrumental in putting the works together, almost curating shows, but combining artists and their vision. So it really is interesting to see, and we've talked about this, and maybe you can expand a little bit on your palettes are very similar. Everything has a relationship to each other. I know you're each exploring some kinds of, similar familiar themes of domesticity, but also materiality, and sort of exploring those things too. So it's been really wonderful for us, of course, to see the work come together at Roy and know that that narrative is, recognized by our jurors, and is really great for the viewer then when they're experiencing the artwork. So that leads to one of the questions that the interns posed, which is, how does the show at Roy reflect your unique artistic signature? In any order. I'll call on you.
I guess I can start. So I found that interesting, that use of the term signature, because I can't not think about like the dude abstract expressionist painters, like painting their name boldly in the bottom corner of the painting, right? Like their name was so important to the action of the painting and to the importance of the painting. And it left me wondering, like, do I think about the signature in my work? And I don't think I do. I think more of it as an artistic voice. So like, think about all the things we can do with our voice. We can sing, we can talk, we can make all the sounds, right? And I haven't thought in a very long time about if my work looks like it was made by me. I mean, I seem to have the problem where everything I touch, it looks the same. And so like, even working between materials, because like I use ceramic in my work, I use fiber, I have a lot of wood in this particular body of work, and like weird stuff like vinyl and plastic chain as well. I do think that I use color to kind of tie things together. The same aesthetic is kind of present across all bodies of my work, but perhaps the underpinning, the thing that holds everything together, is the conceptual interest in the work that I'm making. Although if you put everything in a room, I'm sure it would very much look like it was all made by me.
I can go next. So thinking about signature, kind of like you were also, Brittany, our collaborative title is our last names, Batres Gilvin. Those two names as words coming together is very much a reflection of our practice and our lives being joined together and bringing different cultures together. And also all the different materials and kind of cultural practices and traditions. And for this show, I mean, it wasn't super intentional, but every single piece in the show is like a different material. It's a different technique. And we kind of pride ourselves on being artists that kind of shapeshift in that way. We like to play with new materials, learn new techniques, and try not to get stuck in any one thing, but then also like to loop back around to previous ways of working. So in 2018, Carla did a lot of metal punching and tin work for the first time. And then that's something that we've come back to with this wedding ring quilt. And like I was saying earlier, piñata making is kind of a constant throughout our work, and paper mache. And yeah, I mean, just seeing all of the work come together was really exciting, actually, because generally we try and create kind of a series of work, a body of work that might share a theme and a technique or a way of making. And for this, we were kind of selecting work that we have made throughout the pandemic. And they're actually pieces from kind of different bodies of work or different, I mean, it always goes back to kind of the theme of immigration or families coming together, people joining cultures. But we have a whole body of foam work, of styrofoam work, and then we have one piece from that body of work in the show. We have, like I said, a whole body of tin work, and we selected one for the show. We also like to work with found objects and materials, so we decided to put the glasses in the show. And seeing all of those kind of things coming together was actually really exciting for us. And yeah, and also the way it connected to everyone else's work. I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I know those are other questions, but yeah, it was just really exciting to see it all come together.
Yeah, I know at the opening, I had quite a few conversations with people about the glasses particularly. Many of them had then stories about their own glassware or recognizing pieces and wondering at their origin, depression glass. We had a long conversation about the company Avon and their commemorative glass pieces that were sold once upon a time, and the rituals around that, purchasing and displaying and using the glasses only for special occasions, or, you know, a particular color for a particular season or whatever. So those are kind of like universal themes to make those connections with visitors in your work too. So that was really an interesting experience that I had at the opening on Friday.
Yeah, and that's something we strive for. We talk about a lot of kind of more difficult topics, things that are hard for us to express in our own lives. And that's kind of why we make the work that we make. It's to start conversations or kind of process things that we go through on a daily basis. And we want to make the work appealing to people. We don't want to make it confrontational, even if it is about an argument or something negative that was said to one of us. We want the work to still be colorful and approachable so that you can start those conversations, and it just makes things a little bit easier.
Yep. Great. Greg?
So with this particular body of work, the one thing that I kind of go back to a lot is the fact that it's been a very kind of long 5-year journey to doing more representational or illustrative work, or work that is definitely influenced by the history of illustration and comics and graphic novels.
Yeah.
Because especially 5 years ago, if you had told me that I was going to do figurative work, I would have laughed at you, because I was never terribly confident with my rendering or really any of my drawing skills. So that definitely has been, it's been a journey. It's been sort of interesting because the medium that I work with, just because I have felt it since about 2007, and my understanding of how the process layers and how colors layer really kind of lend itself well to these types of depiction, where I'm able to really kind of exploit the material to get some results that I was unsuccessful in getting in possibly other mediums in the past. So it's definitely it's sort of been interesting because it definitely is a medium that I will continuously go back to. It's the one that I feel the most comfortable with, and the one that I feel also the most comfortable to experiment with new ideas and with new imagery or new processes. I can be a little bit more conservative in my approach when I'm approaching a material that I'm not as familiar with, just because craft as a field definitely is really important to me. So I have a very earnest desire for it to be technically right and for it to be well made and well crafted. And I just feel that also that knowledge helps kind of inform the work. Yeah.
Great. We've had some conversations actually amongst ourselves about the figures that you're making and the details that you are including or leaving out. And maybe some of it is just the practicality of creating a very detailed, eye, for instance, or a lip in a figure made with, fiber materials that it might be very difficult to do that. But also there's some really wonderful gestures and details in the work with maybe a facial hair or how the hair is curled or something like that in it. So do you make some choices consciously or otherwise when you're creating these figures?
I was actually talking to an artist friend yesterday about this. It is lending itself to the idea of anonymity and the sort of the anonymous figure. I mean, these are really based on a lot of walks that I have done in this past year and thoughts that have occurred with me and how that has intersected in the narratives that my mind has constructed. So a lot of times when I'm leaving out details, it is really to kind of bring more features to the prominence. And it's also sort of actually, and it's something I didn't realize until yesterday, was a desire to also make a signature style, a signature sort of like my figures look a certain way. And that very much has its roots in my love of illustration and graphic novels and cartoonists and the way that they can, make their version of different characters and the way that their hand and their particular style translates, no matter the subject matter.
Yeah, interesting. It's always interesting for us to live with the works a little bit and your statements and your observations about your own work, and then to meet you and have conversations with you also. Sometimes there's a consistency in observations. Sometimes, of course, things change and evolve. The more you know about your own work, the more we learn about your own work, that our opinions are like, oh, that's why they meant that, or, oh, I wondered about that, or, it might bring up other things too. So it's good to have these conversations, this dialogue. So I appreciate that. One of the other questions that we have is, does the work from other artists being exhibited alongside yours amplify or add meaning to your own work? And how is that true? I think that's one of the things about, this process of ours where we're putting artists' works together. And I know you all had conversations even coming to a conclusion about, where your names would be at the gallery, they're on the glass windows, or what kind of title you would have as a group or individual ones. And so how, I guess, that sort of leads into it as well. So, exhibiting your work along someone else's, how does that amplify or influence what it is that you're bringing and sharing with us? Not everything makes the cut. Sometimes we bring more art than the walls have space for. So, and Bradley, if you'll start us off.
Yeah, I think it was amazing to see all of the work together. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the big things that we keep coming back to is the color palette of the work and how it all relates so well. It definitely feels like that's the unifying kind of part of the show. Also the sense of nostalgia that comes from the work. And I think that's where you get into the kind of similar familiar. It's something that you can kind of harken back to in your mind, and it feels very familiar to you. And that's just kind of the amazing thing about us all being together, I think. And yeah, just the kind of style choices and the, the glasses, how they relate to the vases in Britny's work, and the kind of color of the hands in the foam piece with the bean pot, how that relates so well to Greg's figures. So yeah, it was just really neat to see it all come together.
Yeah. And I wonder, I'm sure that this will be true as well, that seeing this body of work, you'll be influenced to try something else or think about a different color or gesture or material that you hadn't explored before. So that's another advantage to showing alongside some other artists at Roy.
Yeah, definitely, because like I was saying, Carla and I, we work so much with different kinds of materials. We were even talking to Britny about the way she uses terracotta and how we actually in grad school, we're talking about possibly getting into terracotta because it does relate so well to Carla's kind of Mexican culture. And then, I mean, we are not really like textile artists, but we always play with the idea of textile, I think. I mean, we have a quilt on the wall, but it's made of metal. And it would be neat to actually, I think, get into some textile work. And I know how to sew, but not like super, super well. So yeah, I mean, just all the connections between us and Greg and Britny were kind of amazing. And yeah, really enjoyed getting to hear their process and how they work.
Yeah, we had, the four of us had met to talk about a title for the show. And we had kind of brainstormed on a Google Doc together and put images of what might go into the show and put our artist statements. And I thought the conversation was a pretty quick one. There wasn't a lot of disagreement, but I did want to, like, the color, obviously, and also I think that all three of us are trying to use material or materials in a specific way to kind of enact an awareness, but also through like an alienation process. Like the term nostalgia came up earlier, and nostalgia has always sat kind of weird with me because it seems like a rosy look at the past. And like in my work, I'm using things that are kind of recognizable, but I'm making them other. I'm removing things from like our tactile experience. We can't touch the cloth that's hanging through the loop. That's almost like where you would dry your hands in a restroom, or, like really like put your head on the pillow on the wall. It's pretty flat. There's hard ceramic stitched to it. And so it's like I'm inviting people in. And I think, Bradley, in your work, you're doing that as well. And then also, Greg, with your felted pieces, like there's little gems in there. Like you think you know what's going on, and then you look closer and then there's more to it. So I think that even though the show at first glance looks pretty happy, it's also just kind of like following it right up with some other kind of darker themes.
Yeah, I think it's certainly nostalgic in some ways, but not naive. That there's a tension there of what we remember and what we choose to forget. So yeah, I'm picking up on some of those things too. It's very interesting. So yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Oh, and I was gonna say, so the one thing that I kind of go back to is it also kind of becomes very welcoming. It becomes very welcoming to the viewer to come and approach the work. And going back to our our title discussion, it's also very almost familiar, because it's using forms, materials, or even shades or items of function that have an embedded memory in the viewer that invites them into the kind of conversation with the piece, but then does have what else is going on, those other undercurrents, or even just simply other currents with actually the piece. And I think it's also been really kind of quite interesting because of the titles. I think that also the titles with my work, definitely, it's sort of meant to help and add to the story and the narrative,
Mhm.
and to kind of inform the work and the viewer of their experience of it. And I've always liked that strategy because I think it gives you then an opportunity to kind of add, you know, another layer. So that's also been sort of just great. He's also seen how the other artists have titled their work and their strategies for titling, and how it informs the work, but also can obscure, like
Mm.
just in that same way where it can help make something seem familiar. It also could make the familiar then seem a little bit more uncanny.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, some of the choices that you all are making with regard to installation as well. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. You know, to your point about, oh, it invites you in. Oh, a quilt. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm just going to cuddle up with the quilt. No, I'm not. It's tin, right? Or these glasses that are on this really intricate doily harkens back to, you know, my grandmother displayed things like that, right? But then it's on the floor. And then with Britny's work, it dangles from the ceiling and it's just below your eye level, so you're not fully engaged with it, but you have to then manipulate yourself to get to it, and then it just grazes the floor. And then some of Greg's work where you don't think of it as something that you would put on the floor. Now here's the bottom of a shower. So maybe could you talk a little bit about those choices and how the work that you're creating is informed by maybe how it is displayed, or vice versa? Greg?
So the interesting thing about the floor pieces in particular is I went back and forth on if I should actually make them, because they're called welcome mats, and should I make them floor pieces or should I put them on the wall? So of course is a very comedic back and forth of me placing the piece on the floor, placing it on the wall, placing it on the floor. Um, and weirdly, I sort of like, and definitely came to the side of wanting it on the floor, because it definitely invokes the stance of how I experience those patterns or those spaces. And in that way, it has that moment of connection between myself as the maker, and very much the viewer, because they're viewing the space I'm trying to render the same way I had experienced that space that I'm trying to bring back to my memory. And also in that way, that's how I do work on these pieces. I'm relatively tall, about 6'3", and when I'm working on felt, and because of the process, I do kind of lean over the pieces, and I'm always kind of looking down. Like the figures, the first time that I ever get to see them on the, on a vertical surface is when they're finished.
Yeah, I guess I think about how my work lives in the space while I'm making the work, but also kind of playing after the work is made, because I wanted to activate spaces away from the wall, except I do have the one piece that is like flush flat to the wall. Everything else I wanted people to be able to have different angles of view on and understand the objectness of them. The one that's hanging on the chain will always make me nervous because I have like these really fragile, breakable ceramic tassels coming off of it. It's swinging. It's meant to kind of pull at your gut and make you feel a little uncomfortable. What is life if you're not living on the edge, right? And I do think that my interest in kind of material transformation and misusing and misperforming objects and material, for example, the ceramic tassels, who in their right mind would make that, right? So incredibly breakable, or a ceramic hanger, which I have one in the show, or the pleather that I color matched with paint and have things that are upholstered with pleather next to painted wood, and you can't really understand that transition until you get close to it. And so I feel like the way I curate work and put it into the space is very much about inviting people to get closer to look at it. So there are details. There's kind of like the overall, and then you get absorbed into what's amiss, what's going wrong here, what's strange about this thing. I mean, on the sandbag behind you, Lynette, on that yellow piece, I mean, it's encrusted in ceramic, like buttons almost. So like really, like it's about the details for me. Even though they're decently sized works, I want people to get up close to them and look at them.
Yeah, I kind of echo a lot of things that you all have just said. We often think about first either the material and kind of a material transformation. So the quilt being made out of metal, being sharp, it's heavy, it's not fabric, it's not light, but then hanging it just like you would hang a normal quilt on your wall. It's suspended on a rod with like these brackets. It's not treated like anything other than a quilt. So it adds to the level of comfort, but then you have to really get close to it and realize that it is not soft, it is not fabric, it is metal, it is sharp. And then if you look behind it, you see, because it is kind of suspended away from the wall a little bit, you can actually see all the wires in the back and kind of the messiness of the way it's put together, which to me just kind of adds to the unsettlingness of it. And then obviously the glasses being placed on the floor, it's something they're so common. They're something that everyone has seen in their lives, either at their grandmother's house or wherever. The doily, the tablecloth, all of the kind of vintage glasses, but then they're perilously placed on the floor where a dog can run up to it, knock them over, someone could back into it. And that was a lot of fun at the opening, actually. It added that level of tension that we wanted. And that just relates back to what the piece is trying to represent, which is kind of the moment where our families were joining together when we got married. We collected all of those glasses for our wedding. And there was so much controversy about using glass at the wedding, coming from both my family and Carla's family. And specifically, like Carla's family was so worried about the drunk Mexicans breaking all of these glasses. So there was just kind of things like that coming into play. And we're like, no, like this is something we really want, we really believe in. We believe that our families can come together and be civil and get along and love each other's cultures. And that's actually what ended up happening. It was a very smooth day. It went really well and everyone got along and no one broke a glass. All 235 survived. So it was kind of a way to show people that this was possible. It can work. But it is tricky still. It is, like I said, it's perilous. It's something you have to be careful when doing, when kind of tackling. And then, I mean, things like the piñata piece, it's a photograph. Who thinks to break a photograph, to swing a bat or something at a photograph of your family? And also the way it's kind of just slightly off the wall. So it's not able to really be, it's not really functional as a piñata. And then we also incorporate a lot of text, especially in pieces like the foam piece. And those foam pieces are a traditional kind of Mexican party decoration. So you might have that at a quinceañera or at a baptism or an event like that. That's a big milestone. You'll have this kind of foam, styrofoam, upcycled kind of decoration. And they're always glittery and beautiful and colorful. But then it has this text on it that kind of makes you wonder, what is the situation here? So it's, what if he doesn't like beans? And so just little things like that that kind of show you that there's another kind of layer or level going on beneath the surface. It's not all, colorful and bright and sparkly. There is tension in the work. So, but yeah, when we use those things, those colors and those, shiny bits to bring people in and make them want to start that conversation.
That's interesting. Where do you all see your work going from here? Not just like what's next for you, as in what's the next show? Feel free to make a commercial now. But also, where do you see your art going from here? What kinds of other materials are you looking to explore? Bradley, you talked a little bit about maybe trying to explore some things with terracotta. So what has this exhibition or others prompted you to consider?
Yeah, we have thought about maybe doing something ceramic, and Brittany was trying to convince me that, it's something I can do. I'm always so fearful of ceramic and that whole process, but that would be an incredible thing to kind of explore. We always are looking for new materials to kind of incorporate, but we're also interested, I think, especially right now, in kind of looking back at all of the things we've tried and maybe digging a little deeper into different materials, and maybe going back to the tin punching and the kind of enamel painting on tin. That might be something that we explore further. But also, like I said earlier, we've often, I think, approached making work as making a series or a body of work that shares a theme and a technique. And I think this show really kind of helped us see that we can be a little bit more, I don't know what the word would be, we can pick and choose different materials and bring them together. And things don't have to be so kind of consistent and one big body. They can come from different places and still feel connected. And that kind of actually adds, I think, to each piece when you get to compare them. And it was funny, the comments about the glass piece, because we would just kind of stand by and like listen to people as they would enter the gallery, and they would come in, and you get some people like, oh, that's just so beautiful, all those glasses. And that's a great thing to hear. And that can lead to conversations about what the piece is representing and the story behind it. But then you'll have people come in, be very dismissive of it, be like, oh, I could make that in my grandma's kitchen. And I love stuff like that, because you have, people being a little bit more dismissive of something because it's just a bunch of found objects arranged. And they think, oh, I could do that. But then you have this tin punched quilt hanging above it that took hours and hours and hours to make. And I don't think people always realize that that's by the same artist. And it's kind of nice to have those objects together and be, at least for us to know that it is by the same artist. You can do multiple kinds of things and have, many different materials and ways of working, and it all kind of be cohesive and make sense and tell different parts of the same story.
I feel like my work is going to go more toward the wooden structures and seeing how big and how weird I can make them. Having this body of work done and looking at it in the gallery has really convinced me that I can make things out of wood. It's always like I love how fast it is compared to, I mean, most of my training has been in ceramics where it takes so long to make anything, and it's kind of a fool's errand to make anything big out of clay. And so I do think that the wooden structures are doing something that I'm really into, and also just providing me with more creative problems to solve when I'm building and kind of developing my own language within the material. So I would like to keep that going. Perhaps maybe some like coat tree type things, with things hanging on them or something like that, like always kind of sticking to something that's almost recognizable.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Maybe a vanity will be in your future. And yes, it's a lot easier to use ready-made wood until you get to the point where you're going to decide to grow the wood you want and have to kiln dry the wood for 3 days. I see that in your future. Greg, what's your response?
I wish I could say with any confidence that I know, but I don't know if I do know what's kind of coming up next. I'll admit I don't have any next show right now.
Uh-huh.
And I'll admit it's very helpful for me to have like an end goal or something to work towards and to have that structure. Yeah, it's the performance probably is the one I'm probably the most surprised I was able to do. I used to be an entertainer. I was a drag queen for a few years, and I've emceed different events and done all that. But the last few years, I have been struggling with being in social settings and being able to handle that in a healthy way.
Mhm.
So the fact that I was able to kind of return to that, and if anyone missed it, get to do the chicken dance for 3 minutes while wearing a giant gray lint looking suit as a clown, um, was weirdly a big achievement for me. So big milestone.
It was great for Roy too. And I mean, so controlled. You knew exactly, the start, the end, the segues in between. I saw you rehearsing. It was down to exactly 11 minutes. I mean, it was well done. I mean, I enjoyed it. So I couldn't wait to see what you were going to do with all the different music, because we were listening to the file beforehand to make sure everything works. And I was like, I don't even know. What is he going to do with this? So that was great to watch.
Yeah, I mean, transitions from the Cardigans to Randy Travis are jarring. They can be jarring.
I can't.
With some meatloaf in there. But yeah, it is sort of interesting because I think that it's helpful to kind of rely on my performance and theater background. And I've done theater productions as well. And realizing that structure, kind of again mentioning that idea that I work well with a goal, giving myself a structure then allows me to ad-lib and to be a little bit more improvisational.
Mhm.
Because during the performance, there was a unplanned audio restart.
Yep.
But thanks to years and years and years of performing and having things go wrong a lot, you get prepared for it. And it was nice to kind of get to reuse those skills, which I haven't really used in a while.
It was nerve-wracking for me. I mean, that's all on me. I was concerned because the screen started to go black and I touched the pad, and I shouldn't have. I should have just touched a different button instead. And I was like, oh my God, now I've ruined it. Oh, yeah, that was very nerve-wracking for me. Well, maybe the next thing you'll do will be performance-based, and you'll do homages to iconic costumes with your work. So I see a red scarf in your future. Maybe we'll see about that.
Greg, your performance, it made me realize I haven't been in a space with other human beings laughing in a year and a half. Like there was such a wash of being delighted that came over the crowd, and because I think we were very unsure of what was going to happen, and the level of camp in it was really interesting. It put another layer onto your work for me. And it was great in a big group watching that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I will admit it was really inspired by reading Jenny Lawson's book Furiously Happy, and that choice, and the power of absurdity, and the power I kind of have regained, and a little bit of agency I've regained in my life through kind of the embracing of the absurd and humor, and laughing at myself and literally becoming a clown.
Yeah, everything has been so serious and grave. You're right, for over a year, and so it really was wonderful to have joy for a moment. This is the second month in a row we've had a performance at our openings, and I really like them. Last month, Janelle combed her hair for half an hour, and people, just literally stood around and watched her comb her hair for 30 minutes. Didn't move, applauded at the end. And so, part of that is our Midwest upbringing, right? We're very polite. We'll sit there. But it is nice to have a performance in the space where, another discipline, because it's just visual arts really, and which is always compelling. I'm not saying that it isn't, but it is nice to have something that adds another dimension to the experience. So yeah, thank you for that. So we talked a little bit about this when you were addressing the other question, but as an emerging artist, how do you envision this exhibition impacting the trajectory of your work? So were there, we talk about Roy all the time, and that it is a safe and inclusive space for artists to explore their own vision, right, and their voice, because it's a nonprofit gallery. So we're not very concerned about whether or not art sells. We love it when it happens, don't get me wrong, but it's not the end all be all of what we do, so that artists can take chances here in the gallery and make different choices. So how is this experience at Roy helping you in the trajectory of the work that you're creating and where your career is going?
I'll go first. So I'll be very candid in the fact that it gave me confidence. And it gave me, it very much kind of gave me a boost that was very much needed. You know, I'm trying to remember the exact timeline, but the the deadline for the emergency artists and that, it really helped during some rougher periods during last year to have that goal of applying, and also having the kind of the nerve to apply again and get my work out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then also it gave me very much the structure again after I was very, very happily accepted and with that sort of deadline. I'm hoping that it kind of lets me be a little bit less, you're gonna laugh at this, especially if you saw the performance on Friday. You're be a little bit less timid. To be a little bit less timid, and maybe not, I'm always gonna second guess, but if I can get away from the 6th and the 5th, that would probably be good and good progress.
Right.
So
that's good to know. I mean, it's nice that, we have that kind of impact in the trajectory, because it's very important to Roy to create a space where that's true, where you can explore and experiment. And we love being, part of what you'll be doing next, and that you had a space where, you felt that your work was valued, and we were all in anticipation of seeing it, and that all those things are true. So that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, I think after the last year and a half, there were so many things that just didn't pan out, that weren't able to happen. And Carl and I, we graduated from grad school actually in spring of 2020. So we were, and we had started our collaborative in grad school. So like 2018, the first year of grad school. So all of our exhibitions and a lot of what we were doing up until that point was all through school. It was all school related. And we were excited and ready to kind of get out into the community and start showing and making work. And then, of course, the pandemic started. We didn't get to have like our thesis show at the end of our grad school experience. So that was kind of a big blow. So, I mean, like Greg said, just getting to apply and having something to look forward to, and then actually getting to experience what we did the other night, where you actually get to have an opening with people and talk about your work face to face. And like, that was such a big deal. And it was so kind of needed right now, I think. And yeah, I mean, it just was so nice to get to show the work that we've been kind of holding on to and sitting on for the last year and a half. And these ideas that we've been talking about with one another, but not able to share more broadly or not in person. I mean, so much was done through things like this over the computer. But there's just a different feeling when you're there with people in person and get to look at art. So yeah, I think it gave us a level of confidence. It kind of gave us the that passion again to want to really start making a lot of new work. Because when you don't know if you're going to be able to show, if you're unsure about when your next show is going to be or who's going to be looking at your work, it kind of gets hard to want to make more. So I think right now we're in that mindset of, okay, what's coming up next? What can we make now? What can we get started? So that's been really, really helpful.
I have been wanting to show at Roy since like 2014 when I moved to Columbus. So it was very nice to get accepted into this year's lineup. I realized a couple weeks ago, it'd been a long time since I showed in Columbus before maybe May of this spring. Like, of course, maybe the last show I'd had in Columbus was I showed at the X Space across the street from Roy, like in 2017. And then, of course, like my thesis show at the end of grad school at OSU. And so it was fantastic to have my work up at the opening at Roy because so many people came through that I haven't had the chance to talk about my work with. Like I know a lot more about their practices than they know about mine. A lot of the people who I had very great conversations with are current grad students at OSU. Like I know socially and I know their work, but they don't necessarily know what I do. And so it was fantastic to show locally again. And I also think Roy sits at this interesting intersection between the different art communities in the city. Like generally, there's not a ton of crossover between the different academic institutions in the city, unless you're like in Franklinton at Roy or perhaps a few other places. But I do think that it's a good place to go and meet people and really kind of get out of your normal friend circle. So it was very great at the opening to see people and be in person, and it felt like a party.
Great. Well, we love that for sure. It's so nice to have people come back to our space. I don't want to lose some of the virtual elements that we've had, because it means that people can participate in what we're doing from across the country, let's say Seattle, Washington, for instance. But it is really nice to have a conversation in person with people where you can, feed off of their energy and they can feed off of yours in order to have this shared experience in the moment. There's just nothing that is a substitute for that. So we certainly love having people in the space. So I'm so glad that you had that same experience. Well, we're coming up on our time. We usually schedule these for about an hour. And so I wanted to give you all an opportunity. Do you have questions for each other or questions for me, or anything that you would like to cover that we did not? I know this seems like an interview, doesn't it? Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? No, but I mean, if there's something about each other's work that you had a question about, now's the time. And I'll take a moment and just thank you all for your your work, your creativity. I say this often to artists. I don't know how you continue to find space to explore your creativity, but we are also grateful that you do, especially given the last year that we had. We absolutely needed art in our lives. My experience at Roy staying open during the pandemic was, people coming in and making appointments, generally speaking, sometimes just showing up, but always just walking into the space and just taking a deep breath, because they knew they were in a space where creativity was celebrated and something beautiful to look at, different, of course, than the four walls that they had been looking at for a considerable number of months in a row. Some upcoming things at Roy to share with you is you all are doing some Instagram takeovers coming up in the next couple of weeks. So I'll be very excited to see what you'll be sharing from your studio, and some behind the scenes, maybe videos. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what that will provide us. Let's see, the show ends August 7th. So, make sure that you make some time to come in and see the exhibition before it closes on August 7th. We just sent out our call for entries for 2022. We have a deadline of that for August 15th. So you've certainly heard artists who've had positive experiences with Roy. So those of you tuning in on YouTube to watch this, please consider applying for an exhibition of your own. We've started to do critiques here, and we're going to be doing those on the third Thursday of the month, and we start on July 15th. So I'm very excited for that. One of our artists is Janelle is putting that together for us and scheduling artists for, I think, 15-minute sessions to bring in a piece of work to have a conversation. So I'm excited that we're bringing those back. And we are offering a half tones for design workshop with Upright Press. That's coming up on July 24th from 2 to 4 p.m. So those are the commercials that I have. Do you all want to share anything else?
I guess I do have a small commercial.
Yeah.
On August 3rd, through Praxis Fiber Workshop here in Cleveland, I'll be offering doing a free felting Zoom program.
Great.
So individuals can ask questions about the felting process. We also have kits at the Praxis Fiber Art Workshop that individuals can buy to learn how to felt at home. And all the proceeds for that do go to Praxis. And yeah, it's I wanted to be able to offer a free event so that way individuals could kind of ask questions about the process, kind of share a medium that has really helped me in a lot of ways, and also demystify the process. My running joke is that if you've ever shrunk a sweater in the dryer, you have actually felted.
Yeah. I'm an artist then. Oh, I never thought of it. Never knew that.
I'll admit it is the joke I start many of my workshops with. I'll ask who's ever shrunk a sweater in the dryer, and you'll see, raised hands. And I said, well, you know everything. You can go home. You're done. That was it.
I have a few things to plug. So today is the last day of my Instagram takeover for Psychic Jacuzzi. So if you haven't gone over there to follow them, please do. Each week they feature a different artist. It's really cool. And then also I have an exhibition up in Birmingham, Alabama right now. It's up for another week. It's entitled Couched, and it's at Vinegar Contemporary. So I'm very excited about that. And then I don't know whether if I should plug this or not, but I am a co-founder of a new art space in Columbus called Dream Clinic. And our next opening is on the 23rd from 7 to 9 p.m. And we are featuring the work of Aaron Peters. So yeah, we're over near the Children's Hospital. So there's not many other art things happening over there, but yeah.
That's great. Like over by Parsons and Livingston in that area.
Yep, we're just behind East Livingston. Yeah.
I love, that's so wonderful because look what the arts is going to do for that neighborhood. There's already starting to be some, up and coming shops, and I've noticed some breweries there, and I have friends who've purchased property there, and so they're making their homes in that space, and I just think that's wonderful. Well, awesome. That's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go ahead and plug some things that are coming up for us as well. We currently have work up at the Carnegie in Covington, Kentucky. So it's just right across the river from downtown Cincinnati. And that's part of the show called Residue. And that's up through November, early November. So it'll be up for a while. So if you're ever in the Cincinnati area, stop by that show. We have a lot of things coming up in the fall, some workshops and things that we're kind of planning right now. Through Artworks. If you've ever heard of the Artworks organization in Cincinnati, they are really behind all of the big mural projects in Cincinnati. And actually, we're currently working on one of their mural projects in East Price Hill, which is a neighborhood of Cincinnati. And it's a house that's being completely wrapped in a mural. And it is representing kind of the migrants in that community from Mexico and Guatemala. So it's very special to us. It's our work going up on the walls of this house, which is incredible to see our work kind of brought up to that scale. So we're really excited about that. It will be completed mid-August. So if you're ever in East Price Hill, that neighborhood, drive by. It's right behind their ARCO building, which is their Arts and Community Center for that neighborhood. So yeah, we have some exciting things coming up and a lot of stuff in the Cincinnati area. So
That's great.
yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we're at time. I'm so glad that you were able to share some things that we can look forward to seeing from each of you moving forward. So that's wonderful to see what's next. It takes a couple of days usually, but then we'll post this conversation on our YouTube channel. And again, thank you all so much just for the conversation. I really appreciate it. I learned some things I didn't know about you from just your statements. So that'll be great. I'm going to take another look around at the artwork and with fresh eyes and a different perspective. So appreciate that very much. All right, now get back. Now get back to the studio. You've got some things to start creating.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you.